I'm pressing on my upward way. New heights I'm gaining every day, and still praying as I bound. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and help me stand by faith on heaven's tableland, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and help me stand by faith on heaven's tableland, a higher place than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed my pleasure to introduce to you a true sister, a true lover of Lynchburg, Virginia, a true lover of culture and heritage, a true lover of sharing, a true artist, Anne van der Graaf.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you especially, Hiawatha, for that introduction. Hiawatha himself is a great artist, a choreographer, a visionary, and a magician. I would first like to take this opportunity to thank Allison McSwain, Recreation Supervisor for Citywide Centers, for her vision in inviting me to make this presentation in the city's beautifully remodeled facility, and her hard work in making it a reality, Allison. I would also like to thank Phil Spinner and all the tech staff who did all the work in creating this remarkable setting and in making a video of the event for posterity. And I would particularly like to thank our guest speakers for agreeing to come out and tell about the part they played in the overall struggle for civil rights in 4 to 5 minutes. I'm so pleased to see everyone who came out today to hear some of the stories behind the civil rights movement in Lynchburg during the 1960s and 1970s. We will use my large 3-part painting, Lord, Plant My Feet on Higher Ground, as a backdrop for the stories. The painting was designed to illustrate the ongoing struggle for civil rights. People are streaming from the top of the painting, following in the footsteps of those who have gone before, and continuing forward into the future for the next generation. It is a snapshot of a particular time and a particular place, Lynchburg, Virginia. To begin, let us journey back to that time, really not that long ago. When I came to Lynchburg in 1959 with my husband and small children, Lynchburg was a typical sleepy southern town of that period. It was basically a manufacturing town producing shoes, textiles, hosiery, and tobacco products that was beginning to expand into technology with General Electric and Babcock and Wilcox. My husband was an electronics engineer for GE. At that time, the races were separated by law, known colloquially as the Jim Crow law. That meant that all public facilities, schools, bus and train waiting rooms, parks and recreation facilities, water fountains and toilets were designated either whites only or colored. And it was usually obvious that the quality of the white facilities was superior to those labeled colored. Movie houses and theaters had separate seating facilities. City Hall was all white, except for that custodial staff. The police department was all white. The only jobs available for blacks were as teachers, doctors, preachers, or funeral directors, factory workers, maids, or gardeners. Some had established businesses as barbers, restaurant owners, or insurance agents, but because of institutional racism by banks, credit was almost impossible to obtain. All the power, economic, political, and legal, was held by whites. They were not eager to give it up. The federal government passed civil rights laws promising equal opportunity, but Virginia was a massive resistance state, and public protest and civil disobedience had to be undertaken before those rights could be won. This took great courage. There was always the threat of losing your job or being put in jail. In the 1960s, I became involved in teaching art to a group of young girls at the Deerington Recreation Center, sponsored by Lynchburg Community Action Group. That experience opened my eyes to the distorted vision of, quote, welfare mothers and, quote, Negroes that I had been led to believe accounted for the necessity for keeping the races separate. These were intelligent, caring, and creative people forging lives for themselves in a crushing social environment. I became ever more aware of the gross inequities in our culture, and through Lynchburg Community Action and its leader, Reverend Haywood Robinson, became more and more involved with working for social change. As an artist, I noticed there were no positive images of African Americans displayed in public places, and the local newspaper never printed anything positive about their community. So when I was a fellow at the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts at Sweetbriar in 1982, the idea of portraying the leaders as I saw them coalesced into a preliminary oil sketch for Lord, Plant My Feet on Higher Ground. I invited Junius Haskins, Garnell Stamps, Barry Donald Jones, and attorney Charles Mangum, then president of the local NAACP chapter, to come to my studio to give their opinion. Sadly, Barry and I are the only people left from that memory. Their reactions were very positive. The Lynchburg chapter of the NAACP voted to endorse the project, but funds for the arts dried up, and the project languished. As the years passed, I continued with the help of Junius Haskins Jr. and Garnell Stamps to collect photographs, snapshots, and news clippings of the people and significant landmarks of the era. We had decided to celebrate the peaceful, determined, and positive nature of the movement as it was conducted in Lynchburg in the 1960s and 70s. It was largely due to the strong black leadership, much of it emanating from the black church, that throughout this period of change, there were no riots or burnings such as in other area cities. The painting would portray this through the use of bold, strong color, the forward movement of the people, and the interconnectedness of everyone. from the radical young on the left panel to some of the conservative educators portrayed in the right, from the central figures in the forefront to the other choir members, welfare mothers, and working people making up the background. 75 of the people would be individually identified, but there would be many others who also played significant roles who would remain unnamed. All the stories need to be told. While several members of the white community in Lynchburg assisted in the civil rights movement, there were many in power that resisted change. I chose to limit the scope of the painting to the positive efforts of the African American community. Even though funds had not been forthcoming, I decided to go ahead with the painting in 1991. While the overall dimensions of the work were 5 foot high by over 9 feet wide, it was designed to be in 3 panels and thus easily transported to different locations in order to reach as wide an audience as possible. To that end, in March 1993, a nucleus of a group that was later to become the Legacy Project was formed. This group set about defining the needs for effectively displaying and preserving the triptych, bringing it to the attention of the general public, and soliciting funds. In November 1993, a premiere unveiling of the completed work was held at Lynchburg College. At the program, commentaries were made on the work and the period it represented by City Councilman and NAACP President Junius Haskins Jr., the Reverend Carl B. Hutchison Jr., Mr. L. Garnell Stamps, and Dr. J. Kenneth Moreland, and the Reverend Hayward Robinson Jr., and myself. It was a relief to find that the Lynchburg community wholeheartedly endorsed the undertaking. Other events were held at the Lynchburg Fine Arts Center, Maya Museum at Randolph-Macon Women's College, and at the Knight Capron Library at Lynchburg College, and several churches. Junius Haskins even persuaded fellow members on City Council to display it in City Hall. It is now permanently on display at the Legacy Museum of African American History. Looking at the left-hand panel, wait a minute. Which is a composite. I'm trying to see if I got this. Yeah. There's the left. Is the thing working? Okay. It's a composite of 12th Street and 5th Street. Okay, many young people were frustrated by the slow pace of change, and some pressed the leadership to use a more confrontational approach, exemplified by David Cox's raised fist. Is he there? Black Power Fist. In 1969, Lynchburg Community Action developed a recreation program at the Moss T. Jones School. As a result, a cross was burned in front of the building by unknown perpetrators who feared change. Toward the foreground are clustered Cecilia Jackson, Owen Cardwell Jr., Linda Woodruff, and Brenda Hughes. They were the first African-American students to integrate E.C. Glass High School in 1962. Lynchburg schools did not fully integrate until 1970. In the 1960s, there were very few employment opportunities for African Americans. Bates Ford is shown picketing the local A&P store for jobs. Walter Ford represents organized labor participation. An important source of information on meeting places was the radio. And I don't know if I can work. This seemed to have some problem. I don't know. Oh, here. Does it go all the way? I can't see it all, Varun. But it's on the left-hand panel. Fletcher Hubbard is shown in his role as announcer for WJJS, and also Robert Madlad Goines, who started a pirate radio station in his basement while still in high school. Theodore Burton, Reverend Virgil Wood, and Dr. G.F. Jackson Sr. were charter members of the Lynchburg Improvement Association, which laid the groundwork for Martin Luther King's efforts in Virginia. Looking at the central panel, the institution of the Black Church was a prime mover in the community struggle for justice and equality. Court Street and Diamond Hill Baptist churches are representative of churches in Lynchburg from which issued forth the inspired leadership and committed foot soldiers of the movement. Shown on the first two rows are some of the major leaders of the movement at that time. They had the courage to step forward and take the risks necessary to forge change during that volatile period. Hayes Hall of the Virginia Seminary and College, now VUL, forms a background for college presidents and faculty. I don't know if you can there's Hayes Hall, and there's a college faculty. Premier civil rights activist Virgil Wood, pastor of Diamond Hill Baptist Church, was a professor there. Students participated in sit-ins and other demonstrations to open up public facilities. Monument Terrace, leading down from the old courthouse with its segregated seating areas and the Confederate Soldier Monument, was the final gathering point of many protest marches. And during the late 1950s, boycotts were conducted against businesses on Main Street to protest their racially exclusionary practices. In the right there, Patterson's Drugstore, are the stools of Patterson's Drugstore, where in 1960, college students tried to receive service and were refused. Now we look at the right-hand panel. Not all progress was made through direct confrontation. This panel shows educators such as Dr. C.W.C., principal of Dunbar High School, and Pauline Maloney, and Carl Hutchison Sr., the first black member of the school board. There were doctors, lawyers, and businessmen and women who also made contributions. The poet Anne Spencer is shown in the upper left beside her garden cottage, Eden Crawl. There she is. And in the background of the Jones Memorial Library for whites only, and the Lynchburg General Hospital, where the local African-American physicians were not allowed to practice. Dr. R. Walter Johnson is shown with two of his tennis proteges, Arthur Ashe and Althea Gibson, whom he trained on his private tennis court in Lynchburg. Public tennis courts and country clubs were closed to them because of their race. Until the late 1960s, the city of Lynchburg operated separate recreation facilities for the two races. On the 4th of July, 1961, Oliver Lee Thaxton, there he is, challenged that rule by peacefully leading several youngsters to the Miller Park, whites-only pool to swim. In response, the pool was immediately closed by the authorities, and subsequently, all three public swimming pools were permanently filled in with earth. Voter registration was a key to increasing political power. Dolores Fowler, Ann Wesley, Clarice Banks, and Yvonne Ferguson worked to ensure that people who had been excluded from exercising their right to vote would be registered. Before we move the program to the panelists seated here, I would like to honor two great civil rights leaders who could not be here to speak. The Reverend Dr. Virgil Wood is now living in California. He was pastor of Diamond Hill Baptist Church and taught at the Virginia Seminary. I'd also like to honor M.W. Thornhill, TD, who was head of the community funeral home and an outspoken civil rights leader that later became mayor of Lynchburg. He is also currently not able to go out. Sadly, many of the warriors that are portrayed on the painting are no longer with us. I would particularly like to honor these giants. O.C. Cardwell Sr., oh, there he is. Hazel Woolware, I'm not quite sure which. Attorney Charles M.L. Mangum, Junius Haskins Jr., L. Garnell Stamps, Dr. C.W.C., he is here somewhere. There he is. There he is. And the Reverend Haywood Robinson, Jr. Now I'd like to move to our speakers. These are our elders who carry the memories. There's Mary Payne, who organized programs for low-income girls and worked for LINCAG. Walter Four, a well-known union organizer, vice president of the Lynchburg Voters League. Kenneth Oglesby, one of the organizers of Black Moses, who also worked with LINCAG. Aurelia Langhorne, who ran for a seat on the Virginia House of Representatives in 1977. Langford Hankins, who, when a student at Virginia Seminary, picketed establishments on Main Street for jobs and also was jailed for a sit-in at the Lynchburg lunch counter. Robert Madlad Goins, who, as a 15-year-old boy, operated his own radio station. And Dolores Fowler, who worked in voter registration and was secretary for the NAACP. Now they are going to speak in order, and I'd first like to call on Mary Payne. She and I go back a long time ago to Darrington, and she was one of the women that inspired me to be more forceful, I think. And she is going to speak about her time organizing women and also how she lost her job, I think. She's going to speak about that for her civil rights activities. Mary.
Thank you, and thank you so much for all of you coming here today. It's wonderful to see you. Some of you have served with me on different commissions here in the city, and it's good to see you. It's good to know that you're still able to get about and attend programs of this kind. I am so sorry that we don't have too many young people in here to hear us today or to see all these wonderful people who were active during the civil rights time. And you heard Ann say that it wasn't the safest thing to do. It was a time when you could easily be hurt, your family could be torn apart, but yet these brave people that you see were strong enough and determined enough to want to see all of us in a better position than we were at that particular time. And personally, I was a child of parents who only went to the 4th and 5th grades. And so they were not able to give to me everything I needed to be able to swim with the sharks. But I was able to make it because of my wonderful teachers in my school. From 1st grade through high school, I had teachers who were very much concerned about our welfare and what we could do with our lives and how we could come to our best potential through certain acts of study and music and art. So when I was thrown into a position where I was with a lot of young people who had no one to guide them in the right directions, I felt like that was the greatest thing that I could do for those young people, was to organize them into a group where they could learn and know that there is something better than being tied down with welfare and children. You have more potential than that, and I can help you if you will let me. And so they did. We had about 35 young girls who came every other day to the Darrington Center, where we played games. We had spelling bees, which was out of date for people. People thought that was a funny thing. They laughed at us because we had spelling bees. But it was my only way of knowing that I could help them learn to spell and study their lessons better, because they would have to know how to spell a word. And of course, they didn't want their friends laughing at them because they couldn't spell it or didn't know its meaning. And I also took them to every open art place in Lynchburg that black children could go to. Some of those children had never been out of their own community. The school was right there in the community, so they had no reason, and the parents had no money to take them. So we learned to do those things with one another, and we go down to the at Blackwater Creek, which was right down the hill from us. And we go down there and talk about the fish, talk about the deer that we saw. Sometimes we even were crazy enough to wade in the water. But they learned, and I am so proud this day to tell you that over half of those 35 girls went on to college, and they have stepped up. They are no longer in that position. Some of those young women have been working on their jobs for over 32 years now, and they love their lives. They love their children. One young lady calls me every day about Donald Trump. She just thinks it's the funniest thing she ever heard, Donald Trump. And so we keep in contact with each other. But the greatest feeling that I have, and the most thing that I think that I could offer those young girls, is the desire to want to be better than what we are. Always want to be somebody for yourself to know. Don't worry about what anyone else in this room thinks of you. You be somebody for yourself to know. And when you do that, you can overcome. Now, we had, don't think that it was easy, believe me, because during that time, segregation and coming out of segregation was a hard time for people in Lynchburg. And if you've lived here all your life, if you've been here for the last 15 years, you know that Lynchburg is still in 1963. They will not move forward. So if you can imagine, in 1963, they were living in 1860. See, so it wasn't easy, but we overcame. And that's the major thing in life for all of us. And so again, I want to say to all of you that when I look around this room and see people that I saw as a younger person, when my hair wasn't so white and my walk wasn't so slow, we met together to work together to make it a better place for all of us in Lynchburg. Not just white people, not just black people, but all the people in Lynchburg is what we were working for, because we wanted our children to be able to swim in the mainstream of life. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank each one of you for being here today. And I love seeing you. And if possible, say hello before you get out of here. If it's not, that's okay. I saw you.
Thank you, Mary. Then we have Walter Four, who is very well known in this city. And he started out as a union organizer and he was vice president of the Lynchburg Voters League, and has been active in politics and civil rights all his life, or at least as long as I've known him. Walter?
Thank you. Thank all of you all for coming out this afternoon, and I'm just proud to be a part of this panel. I'm going to be very, very brief because we have to go. John Fishwick has invited us up to Roanoke to his installation as the new federal judge. But my experience was that wasn't all pretty, so I'm not going to pretty it up. When I got out of the Marine Corps in 1959, I came smack dab into the middle of the civil rights movement. Not being aware of how serious it was, I just played along until T.D. grabbed me by my collar one day and told me, boy, you got to get a little bit more serious about life. There are too many things happening out here that we need you for. You can run around running your mouth about what you did in the Marine Corps. Now we need you to do something for us. So about a year or so after that, I was hired at Gray Morgan, which is now called United States Steel. And at Gray Morgan, I ran into a white gentleman by the name of Russell Burnett, who was determined that he was going to make me one of his assistants at a time that was not pleasant for any white person to take on a young black such as me. I thank God for Russell. I thank God for every one of those individuals down at Griffin Pike. They are too numerous for me to name, that allowed me to have a forum to speak on. They sent me to school. I have with me today on this panel one of my classmates that always built me up, even though I didn't walk across that plank with him. God blessed me with an education beyond any PhD that I could have ever gotten. And that was at the University of Hard Knocks in the United States Marine Corps. I'm kind of taken back by what's going on today because when I was the president of Central Labor Council, there were so many jobs that you could just about get a job any day. Now I'm seeing that we have 5 of our major corporations have shut down. No politician wants to talk about the jobs that were sent overseas, but it's a major, major problem with me because I don't feel good when I look around and I see capable people not being able to get a job. We talk about poverty and some of the causes of poverty. I feel very, very strongly, had it not been for some of those cooperative and board of directors that sent these jobs overseas, American jobs for American workers, and then we're wondering why are we in poverty? It's self-explanatory. So I went on to be very, very successful in the labor movement. I was on one of the boards that selected candidates from all over the state and federal candidates. We would meet in Richmond and Norfolk. And I was one of the only black Central Labor Council presidents left. But I want to get away from black and white and just be an American. I've been asked on several occasions, how do you classify yourself? I classify myself as a card-carrying member of the United States of America. And it's not black or white, I am an American, first and foremost. And as a result of that, I took a strong movement towards segregation and discrimination at Griffin Pike. I was often targeted, I was even fired. But thanks be for the United States Steelworkers of America, they got my job back. And they allowed me to go farther than I could ever have dreamed that I could have went, and I have gone. It gave me the opportunity to meet governors, presidents, senators, and be friends where I have a cell phone to just about all of a number to their cell phones, and we're that close. Me and John Warner got to meet, call him John Warner. I know Mark going to be hot about that. But me and Mark were really good friends. He always would invite me up to the pig roast that he had every year. But that relationship that I had with the politicians gave me an opportunity to really speak my mind about issues. And here in Lynchburg, my heroes were always Garnier Stamps, M.W. Thornhill, Junius Haskins, Owen Caldwell, Dolores Fowler, and Mary Payne. That's just to name a few, because there were so many more. My really buddy failed me and sent me off to the Marine Corps. And we ended up being best friends, and that's W.W. Clark, W.E. Clark. He was a science teacher at Lynchburg High School. And he encouraged me to do better because I could go out to Bloomsburg Country Club and caddy and come back and pass. But that wasn't what he wanted. He wanted me to be in attendance. Passing those tests wasn't going to make it with him, and he failed me. And then we end up, we were inseparable, even up to his death. There were times when his wife would call and we'd be at my house at 9 or 10 o'clock at night trying to figure out how we were going to get a kid out of trouble. As a result of us being together, we were able to speak to the General Assembly, the Court of Appeals. We also had an opportunity to speak in Charlottesville for Just Children, an organization that deals with children only. And we were instrumental in getting some legislation passed where 14-year-olds would not be tried as adults and be placed in cells with adults. So I miss him, and I miss all of these individuals that was there for me. And I'm not going to prolong this, but to God be the glory, because I could never have accomplished some of the things that I have without the presence of my brother Jesus. Thank you.
It's almost time. The next person is Kenneth Oglesby. A lot of the young people were involved in civil rights at that time, and school children, and teenagers, and young adults. And Kimbo, as we knew him, was one of those young, fiery ones, and he was one of the organizers of Black Moses. Kimbo?
That's me. When you were talking about the young and fiery people, I guess I was young and fiery then. I'm not too young and fiery anymore, but thank you for remembering anyway. Walter and I have a lot in common. I grew up with lacking means on Daniels Hill here in Lynchburg in a 4-room house with 8 brothers and sisters. At the time I was 12 years old, we moved to the projects, brand new projects, brand new bricks. I think we were the 3rd family in there. By the time I was 18 years old, I didn't know what I was going to do, but it was very clear to me that I wasn't going to stay in that 4-room house with 8 brothers and sisters. So, United States Air Force called. I spent 4 years there. Most of my compadres went to Vietnam and Cambodia and other places. I went to a place much worse, Shreveport, Louisiana. And that's basically where I got acclimated to getting involved in civil rights, and certainly was a lot to learn. It was a lot to learn in Lynchburg, but it was much more to learn in Shreveport. You had to know your place. We could leave the base on a Saturday morning, walk downtown, and you could literally pass Ku Klux Klan members and people on microphones talking, and you just went on about your business. But I knew when I left Shreveport that my life was not going to be the same. Martin Luther King, of course, died in '68. I had 2 pretty stripes on my Air Force uniform and was scheduled to put on a 3rd one. And I decided that Martin Luther King deserved me to take a day of rest when he was buried, and the base commander decided that he deserved to take my stripe. And I, of course, left the Air Force later that year and came back to Lynchburg. And the rest has been pretty much downhill, comparatively speaking. Black Moses began in 1971. me, Walter, and I think 7 other people with last names like Austin, Huggins, Patrick, Tweedy, Gunn, Haskins were the original members, and not looking for anything except to be a part of this movement. We were blessed with great leaders in our community. Thornhills, Robinsons, Mangums, Hutchison, junior and senior. Junior doesn't get enough credit as far as I'm concerned, but we've always been blessed with leaders, and none of us could stand up here and claim ourselves as any kind of leadership without first acknowledging them, those who came before us. We were involved in Moss T. Jones. We were involved in going to Blacksburg, Virginia Tech, to train people in the community for the race that we had coming before us. This was in 1970, I believe, and of course, it went on forever and ever. I mean, you had to teach people how to be confrontational without getting yourself into a lot of difficulty. You had to learn how to you had to know what you were talking about. You just couldn't throw around statistics like people like to throw around without checking them out. So we became involved in that, and of course we didn't have very much of a problem in the community, even with all the leaders and organizations, the NAACP and all the rest of them, because we were all anxious to work together, and we worked toward that common goal that somewhere along the line has seemed to have lessened a bit. But it was there that we got our feet wet. It was there that in 1972 we had our first Black Liberation Day in Riverside Park, the first of 16 consecutive ones. At the time, I was the president of Black Moses, which I did. I succeeded. I was the president, I think, for 10 times. And I was the master of ceremonies at Black Liberation Day. And I was the one who heard a lot of how disorganized things were, and I was the one who told people that they were lying. They were not disorganized. Black Liberation Day was something special, and it was well coordinated, it was well conducted. And I've been to meetings since then, I mean 20-odd years later, and I've been to meetings when people had the audacity to sit up and say what a great effort it was for them to take that park back. You didn't take nothing back. It never was yours. You hid that park out there on Rivermont Avenue for 100 years, and we stumbled upon it. We didn't try to take it. All we wanted to do was use it like you did.
Kimball, that was wonderful.
I'm through.
I'm sorry. Time is up. It's so good to know that there were women, great leaders in the organization, and Aurelia was one of them. As a young, recent graduate, legal graduate, she came to Lynchburg and ran for the House of Representatives in 1977.
Thank you, Ann. I will say that my speech is not quite as fast as it used to be, so I will try to get through what I have prepared to say. When I first saw the painting, Lord, Plant My Feet on Higher Ground, I was actually surprised to be included in a painting which depicted Lynchburg's African-American civil rights warriors. The question was, what glass ceiling had been challenged? What opportunity had been created? The answer for me at that moment was perhaps what I did in 1977. I had been a candidate for the Virginia House of Delegates in the 11th District, which included Lynchburg, Amherst, and Nelson counties. I was young, 28 years old, bold and naive. The young woman on the painting had a lot of nerve. Some might call it courage. And yes, as to the 1977 campaign, I'm here without regret. Donald Pendleton and Joan Jones, who's with us today, were the Democratic Party candidates. Vance Wilkins and Flo Trawick were the Republican candidates. I ran as an independent. Glenn Webster was my campaign manager. Famous Dr. Augustus Pedicolis was treasurer of the campaign. His wife at that time, Jennifer Lifford Pedicolis, she's a native Lynchburger, was my scheduler and campaign activities photographer. Ben Jones took the official campaign photos used in the billboards and posters. James Arnold, Jesse Jeffries, and others were on the campaign committee. It was a significant group of young black folk tired of not being represented in the Virginia legislature. Many of the young people in the campaign were members of an organization called PACE. I couldn't remember what that meant, so I asked Howard, and he said it was the Progressive Association for Community Enrichment. We were naive but determined. We forged ahead with the campaign. It was a traditional campaign with billboards, pamphlets, signs, factory tours, attendance at festivals, fairs, Brunswick stews, and various group functions with presentations from the candidates and questions. I don't really remember debates. I remember being at candidate forums primarily where all the candidates were present and questions were asked by the organization's members and from the audience and floor. Some organizations, however, were one-on-one. One such meeting was the famous meeting of the Lynchburg Voters League in the basement of the Phyllis Wheatley YWCA. It was quite a meeting. I was accused, and lots of accusations were being hurled at me and my campaign. It was like the establishment versus the young people challenging the status quo. I also remember, and I won't go into this long because time is short, the Equal Rights Amendment was still up to being ratified. Everybody knows Virginia did not ratify it. The winners of the campaign, leading the ticket, was Joan Jones with 12,308 votes. S. Vance Wilkins Jr., unfortunately, he got 10,314 votes, and that was enough for the second seat. I came in last with 3,184 votes. Pendleton was third with 9,012 votes, and Flo Torrey was fourth with 7,500 votes. During and after the campaign, some vocal political active folk blamed me for Don Pendleton's loss, but we were great friends. And yes, I was also blamed for Vance Wilkins' win. So I guess I'm still at fault for the General Assembly being almost 80% Republican, the House, and the Senate's just as bad. They actually have a majority now in Virginia. But anyhow, to go on with the story, in 1979, Pauline Maloney suggested I go see T.D. M.W. Thornhill Jr. about a school board opening. She was rotating off the school board. Howard and I made the appointment. Mr. Thornhill told me he had already promised the seat to Mrs. Mary Pullen. I responded he had made a good choice, that Mrs. Pullen and I had served on the Phyllis Wheatley YWCA board, and she would make a good school board member, and she did. However, in 1981, Mr. Thornhill actually called me on the telephone, and he asked me, "Do you still want to be on that school board?" Anyhow, the rest is history. I served on the school board 8 years. The campaign turned out to be a coming out party for a young black woman who to the natives was a non-Lynchburger making Lynchburg home. It was an introduction of me to the Lynchburg community. There were other opportunities for public service that have a basis based on my work in that 1977 campaign. I'm going to skip a bunch of this, but I'm going to tell you about something very significant. In 1998, Bert Dodson, then chairman of the Lynchburg Democratic Party, called me and asked if he could nominate me for appointment by the Circuit Court to the Electoral Board. And I enjoyed every minute on the Electoral Board. I served on the board for 13 years, and it included the election in 2008 when Barack Hussein Obama became the 44th President of the United States of America.
Thank you, Aurelia.
Okay.
I wish we had time to be longer with each one of these wonderful people, but we do need to move on. Langford Hankins is next speaker, and when he was a student at Virginia Seminary, he picketed establishments on Main Street for jobs and was jailed for sit-ins at a lunch counter. So he was a real warrior. Langford?
Thank you. The Greater Lynchburg Improvement Association, under its founder and president, Reverend Virgil Wood, was a mover and shaker on the local scene for racial equality. My first identification with the movement on the local level was a sit-in at the lunch counter in Patterson Drugstore here in Lynchburg. Now, there were 7 of us: Graaf, the president of VUL, the former president, Joan Crawford, William Robert, Elijah Tucker, Ellie Hankins, which is me, and etc., one more. Now, as the customary, we were arrested, fingerprinted, mug shots, and we were jailed for 30 days. And one of the most scary parts of my life when we went into the courthouse down there and the way that judge talked to us. That's all I'm gonna say about that. It was frightening. Nevertheless, I'm here today. To keep from being repetitive, I'm gonna move on. Another experience was picketing Piggly Wiggly on 12th Street. And I heard you mention Pauline Whedon. She came to me. She was one of the prominent citizens in the city. She came to me and said, "Boy," she said, "why don't you go home? You good-looking little boy there. Why don't you go home? Quit messing around down here." I looked at her, and you know, I didn't say anything. Continued to march. But there walked up to me a person of the Caucasian persuasion, looked at me and said, "Oh," right in my face. I saw red, white, and blue, but I didn't see Jesus. I saw red, white, and blue. And I came up in a Christian home. Mother was a teacher, father, big farmer, but I didn't see Jesus. And I don't believe in anthropomorphism, giving God human-like features. Moving along. The worst thing of that jail was at night. We could play cards during the day. We could joke. But when they took you back in that little back cell, and those iron things came down, you said, "Lord, where am I?" Moving along. Another experience, and I'm going to be through, was the purchase of my home. I was living at 713 Pierce Street. I went to purchase a home, and I asked two attorneys of the Caucasian persuasion would they convey or drop me a deed. Neither one of them would. They told me, "We can't do it." So what you got to do? There was an attorney here, Eugenius Carey. I called my cousin in Washington when we read the deed, said I couldn't buy it. I called my cousin, Attorney Ruth Hankins in Washington, and asked her what must I do. I called prominent attorney in Richmond, asked him what must I do. I called my uncle in Philly, Judge Hankins, asked him what must I do. What must I do? He said, go and buy the land. He said, that doesn't mean anything. As a result of those three directions, I went on and got Lucenius Carey to draw up the deed, and I've been there for 40 years. To end my story, I want to say at the Diamond Hill Baptist Church, in the basement, straight back like that, is where we used to stuff our envelopes. And several times when Dr. Martin Luther King came up here, Dr. Wood brought him twice by my house at 713 Pierce Street. He would bring him by there, and Dr. King would go with him over, and he'd have his class. And then I'd go back with stuffed envelopes. And the good time about stuffing those envelopes was our friend Ed Barksdale. When we finished stuffing envelopes, you know how school feeds you. He would take us over to his house on Grayson Street and feed us. And it was a mighty good time. He fed us.
Well, Ellie, you're a great warrior, but we do need to move on. Thank you. The next one is Mad Lad Goins going to speak. It was a myth in the white community that black folk children were not good enough to go to white schools, and they just didn't have the knowledge, the intelligence to do that. Well, Mad Lad, as a young boy, had the genius to construct his own radio station in his basement. And Mad Lad, are you there? Sorry.
Hello, everybody. How you all doing today? I'm going to be quick, okay? All right, that's cool. I got to get you to do your homework, too. Get your pencils out and write down, first of all, my website. I have this entire thing on my website. It's, www.djmadlad. That's djmadlad.com. And if you click on WKKD, that tells the entire story from beginning to end on my little bootleg radio station. So, and it's real interesting how I got on WJJS and so forth. Then there's another one, WKKD again, which is on now. Anybody know that? A couple of y'all know that, okay. I got the radio bug and it bit me real hard in the leg here, so I got my little bootleg station on. I can't pick it up too good in here from my house in Timberlake, but 87.9. Trying to get over. Superfly's on right now, okay? All right. When you get out in your car, when you get in your car and you drive toward the stadium, you pick it up good in the mall, Target, and all that good stuff. 87.9, playing oldie but goodies. You say, that's that cotton picking Mad Lad again, okay? All right, well, anyway, to make a long story short, the radio was big time segregated back then. I could sing every song by the Dave Clark 5, Beatles, She Loves You, Yeah, 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 I knew that. And I thought that was the norm because radio stations were just rock and roll or whatever. I'd do my homework to the radio, Dave Clark 5, Temptations, turn it up. You know, we blast it for the 3 minutes that the record lasts and it'll go back again. About an hour later, you might hear the Supremes. About another hour later, you might hear some Tyrone Davis or something. But you heard Beatles and stuff, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart and everything. And I didn't know there was such thing as a black radio station until I went to Chicago. And my cousin said, check this out. Y'all ain't got this. WVON, which stood for the Voice of the Negro, 1450 on the dial. And 24 hours a day, they played nothing but black music. Tell you a secret. I stole Mad Lad from one of the DJs on WVON. So now you know where it came from, okay? All right. But anyway, go on my website and you read the story about WKKD because I could be here all afternoon telling you the story. Read WKKD again. And I'm sure everybody wants to know what in the happened to WJJS? Why is it playing Christina Aguilera and Justin Bieber and everybody like that? I have a section in there that says WJJS with the question marks beside it. Click that on and you'll see the biggest segregated, mass, unfair to black music thing that you've ever seen in your entire life. How they rigged contests so that white folks would win. Oh, it's a big thing. You got to read that on my website. That's www.djmadlad.com, DJMADLAD. And before I go, yeah, give me a call and let me know when you're listening out there. I've had the little bootleg station on. It's a pirate station, might well call it that. It ain't supposed to be on, but I still have this thing about Jerry Falwell got 8 stations. This guy got 7 stations. Mad Lad gonna have a little 25-watt one coming out of my Timberlake home out here, and I don't care what anybody says, you know? Believe it or not, I don't say too much about it because I don't want to, raise into too much cane or whatever, but it's been on for a year and 2 months. And it's on 87.9. Listen out for it, okay? And go to my website, email me, and let me know what you think. Thank you.
Thank you, Mad Lad. I must say that the radio was very important back in the 60s and 70s in communicating where the meeting places for the civil rights movement were going to be held. And thank you for your work then and now. The next speaker is Dee Fowler, who's been a great friend for many, many years. Dee worked in voter registration, which meant, and she'll probably tell you about that, but in the old days, blacks couldn't vote. There was many obstacles for voting, and then when the Voting Rights Act was passed, people needed to be educated in how to vote. And I think Dee and the other young women that are on the painting here went out into all these neighborhoods trying to get more voters, and subsequently more political power was held by the black community here. Thank you, Dee. Dee, would you speak?
Thank you, Ann. I'm known as Ms. D. And I have been working in voter registration and education since I was about 17 or 18 years of age. T.D. Thornhill took me under his wing because they needed some young legs to run all over the city to see what could be done or how we could get people to register and then to get them to the polls. And I was assigned to work with Clarice Banks, Yvonne Ferguson, and Ann Wesley. I did the legwork. It was nothing for you to see me. I had a 52 Chevrolet riding all over town. People would call and I would go to the homes and I would pick them up. I had no idea. I had no fear of the city of Lynchburg. And I would go into places and streets and things that I had no idea where I was going. But these people needed to get to be registered, and that's what I did. We had 2 offices. The Voters League had 2 offices. They had one at Community Funeral Home, which Miss Virginia Hughes ran that. And I ran the one at Charles Mangum's office at 618 5th Street. And I was just sitting here thinking, Kim Connor, who is the deputy registrar this day, got her training from me. She worked out of my home with me to learn all about voter registration and education, and I must call and let her know about it today. But I had to go to the registrar's office, who was Edith Geipel, and the registrar's office was in the 2nd floor, I think it was, of the old City Hall. And they would take me and put me in a corner and give me all of these massive books that I would have to go through and to read each name to decipher who was black and who was white, to make a list for the Voters League. Kim and I compiled a massive list. By that time, we had gotten just a tiny bit better, and we had moved out into Fort Hill and far out Rivermont, but not Boonesboro. And the streets and things were not familiar to me, so we would have to get in the car and we would have to go and drive around to see where these streets were. But to this day, I'm still out there getting folks registered, and if it's anybody sitting in here this day who is not registered, I suggest that you go and do this right away. We do have an election coming up March 1. A lot of people don't know that it's going on, but we will be electing representatives to go to it's a dual primary, and that means that it's for Republican and for the Democrats. So please, pass the word on. If anybody needs a ride, anybody needs any help whatsoever, tell them to call Miss D. And I'll be glad to help them. Thanks, Ann.
That was wonderful work, Dee, because as a result, African Americans in Lynchburg have much more political power than they did. Now we're going to open things up for the audience to ask questions, and I have Allison McSwain here who is going to facilitate that.
Thank you. Everyone, I want to take a second and introduce Megan Heatwell. She's our new full-time community planner here at Miller, so she's going to help me. So my understanding, we're just going to, it's an opportunity for you all to ask our panelists some questions. So there's someone up here. You have something else you want to ask? Mickey? Oh. Does anybody have any? Okay. So Megan, you're going to work there you go. Right side, I'm on the left.
I just want everyone in the audience who doesn't know that Aurelia Langhorne is a distinguished attorney, and she is a real asset in our community, and maybe she should have won that election.
Thank you. Megan, over to the right.
There's somebody right back.
Oh, sorry.
I just want to say this is a wonderful afternoon. I learned so much. Many of these faces I know from moving back to Lynchburg in 1977 with my family. We came at the end of the struggle of so much that had happened that I didn't know about. And I just want to thank everybody for all of your work and all of your dedication. And even though, Ms. Payne, we're still in the 1970s, I agree with you on that. I think we still have a long way to go.
Amen. There's a question by a couple.
Though we're here to acknowledge the celebration of a special month, but also the accomplishments of those in the community, I would like to ask you, Ms. Langhorne, as an individual, as a female who was part of that, who passed the board, how did that feel personally as an accomplishment to you, not only as an African American, but also as a woman?
My topic today was to stay on this 1977 campaign, but look, I have a long history, and I got one of those 6-page resumes, but you asked me about passing a board. I guess you're talking about the bar exam. There were only 2 black women in my class at the University of Virginia. I graduated in 1976. And there were about 350 people in my law school class. So being a woman in the law, the bottom line, it definitely has been challenging. And I do want to acknowledge it, though, since you brought that up about the bar. In today's paper, it's unfortunate, Marion Baker, she was 100 years old. And the bar sends out an email, so I knew about it yesterday. She passed away. When I came here, Sally Gilkey and I passed the bar at the same time. And there were only 3 other women attorneys in Lynchburg. Barbara Williams was in the city attorney's office. Susie Stewart Drake was working for Ralston Jester. She did a lot of Social Security work and criminal defense work. And Marion Baker was volunteering at the Legal Aid Society. So it's been quite an experience. Of course, we have a lot of women lawyers now, but we have more men lawyers too. So women still have quite a climb in our community.
I just want to say that as a person of the Caucasian persuasion, it saddens me greatly that we are still in the 1970s in this city. And I wonder if any of you on the panel, Mary particularly brought this up, if any of you all would have suggestions for those of us of this persuasion on the things that we could do to move us forward so that we do have justice for all.
Is anybody there would like to take that question?
I personally feel that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, it has a clause in there which says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal with liberty and justice for all. I think if we live that out, equality, a level playing field, respecting each other's cultures, we won't have any problem. And mainly, go back to church. Go back to church.
Mary, I think you had a suggestion too. Did you have a?
Well, we got to remember that as most of us in this room were youngsters, our wives, you know, the women and men's wives, were one of our major trainers and one of the places that we could go and learn and enjoy and learn how to live with one another. And you see, the wives are no longer popular. So what we need to do is work with the Boys and Girls Clubs more and more each day. The Recreation Department is still trying to bring up kids in the way they ought to go. And so if you could support them, but at anything that you could do that will help a child, train him up in a way that he should go. I think that Lynchburg would spend more time on a tutoring program, an after-school program where young people could come and learn and understand, because all of us in this room are old enough now to know that if you don't learn why 2 and 2 makes 2, you are never going to learn how to subtract the 2 from the 2. You know? So that's my suggestion. Let's just love one another more than we do and put forth an effort to make each other feel like their lives are worth living. That's right.
I just have one question. We celebrate the integration of EC Glass High School, and we draw from it all the time. But I was just thinking earlier as I was listening to Ms. Payne, was there any significant impact with respect to integration during that time or earlier when it comes to the elementary age kids? I remember one particular experience I had when we first came to Lynchburg in the late 60s. I was one among 6 kids that went to Paul Monroe Elementary. But I was just curious, back earlier, were there any challenges or or a particular moment that you can recall when elementary kids had to go into integration experiences? Thank you.
Anyone on the panel? No, I don't. The only answer to that is that I don't recall during my experience as a youngster, but I do recall where Fairview Christian Church is today, that was Fairview School. And there was a competition as far as whites and blacks. We were separated by a bridge. If you ever go to South Lynchburg, you see that. You turn to your left and you go to South Lynchburg School, and you go up, you turn right, you go to Fairview Christian. Well, we'd often be on the buses together, blacks and whites. And we would be teased, but one thing that they knew was that we were equal when it came to learning. They couldn't get around it. We'd be on buses, and oftentimes they would quote different things to us, and we'd quote it right back. And the thing about it was that we didn't have the same equipment as they did, you know, but the thing is, our teachers were more committed. And integration did not help the black community. I don't really think that helped. We don't get the teaching that we did when we were kids. I have to go, but God bless all of you all for coming. I appreciate the opportunity to be before you.
Thank you very much, Walter.
I'd like to take a little exception with the last statement. Integration in many ways did help the black community, if for no other reason. It brought us up to speed with the equipment in Dunbar and the equipment in EC Glass and the black colleges and black schools. When you get the same equipment to learn with, you're likely to go much further with it. If you don't have it, you're not going anywhere regardless of what you mean to do.
I agree.
That's true.
We all have to stop, think, and put ourselves in the place of young people at that time. You know, my color next door to me builds my emotional status, because I relate to that person and he relates to me. If I'm suddenly thrown into a position where I am only 2 or 3 in a class of 30, and the persons that I see are white, then my little peaceful net is now thrown into turmoil. I don't know what to do with myself. I become a problem, you know, they say I'm a behavior problem. And that's because nobody's understanding me. I'm not a behavioral problem, really and truly. It's just that you've thrown me in a position where I can't swim with these fish. I'm just a little tadpole, and I can't swim with these fish. I need someone here that I can recognize. And it's the same thing today. Believe me, it is no difference. The reason we are having behavioral problems in our schools today is because you got too many white people teaching black children. It's as simple as that. Now, it's nothing wrong with integration, because it's the only fair thing that can happen in a world where people have to live together. But it is a problem when we forget that we need to have 5 and 5 and not 1 and 4, but 5 and 5, so that I can feel safe and you can feel safe. So I can imagine that those children had problems. I'm sure that they did, because they're having them today. But it's something that had to happen. And I want you people, I look out there, Joan, and some of the people who came along during my time, and I know they don't recognize me. Yeah, that's perfectly all right. I was a terrible one, Joan. I was fighting all the time. And that was because I didn't understand either. I knew what I wanted, but I didn't know all the particulars of why I wanted it. So I came across like I hated you. But I didn't hate you, and I don't hate you now. Some of my best buddies are those white girls I worked with at Lynchburg General Hospital. But let us always remember that think about it twice right now. If you walked in this room with no one in here but black people, how would you feel? So that's the way I think it must have been, because it's still going.
And I think what Mary Payne said, she gave some ideas on what things we can do is volunteer at the Boys and Girls Club, get to know each other better, and help the children. But we hear the pain still. It is, we've gone over quite a bit of time. Are there any more burning questions? Or people, we will be here. There are refreshments after. Would you like to speak to this?
Yes. First off, thank you all. Thank you, Ann, so much. When I first contacted Ann, I never anticipated such this presentation. Thank you. Thank you to our Lynchburg leaders for all you all have given to Lynchburg and for being here today and sharing your stories. Thank you all for coming out today and as we celebrate together Black History Month, and so appreciate y'all being here. We have refreshments out in the lobby. Please just come, just relax, mingle, have some cake, walk around the building, grab an activity guide, and just have a fun day. So thank you. Thank you.